Welcome to WorldWise Studio, where the world's biggest ideas become surprisingly simple.
You know that standard rectangular world map you grew up with? The one hanging on your classroom wall, or the one that's probably sitting in your head right now as the default picture of our planet? Well, I have some slightly uncomfortable news for us today as we start this explainer. That map is lying to you. In fact, it is mathematically, provably, and unavoidably wrong. 14. Just let that number sink in for a second. If you picture Greenland and Africa on that standard map we all know, they look to be about the exact same size, right? But the reality? Exactly 14 Greenlands can fit inside the continent of Africa. Honestly, if you only take away one thing from this whole explainer, let it be that number, 14. It instantly shatters that unquestioned trust we all tend to place in our mental maps. To put that into perspective, it's like a giant puzzle. You could take the entire landmass of the United States, plus China, India, Japan, and most of Europe, drop them all into Africa like Tetris pieces, and you would still have room left over. The map we all default to drastically inflates the size of the rich northern world and severely shrinks the global south. I mean, Russia looks like it swallows the entire hemisphere, when in truth, Africa is nearly twice its size. So why exactly does this 400-year-old deception even exist in the first place? That brings us to Section 1, the mathematical impossible, or exactly why flat maps just break. It all comes down to a fundamental, inescapable reality. Nearly 200 years ago, a brilliant mathematician named Carl Friedrich Gauss proved that you literally cannot flatten a sphere onto a rectangle without breaking something. Think about an orange for a second. If you peel an orange and try to press that spherical skin completely flat into a table, what happens? Right, it cracks, it tears, and it heavily distorts. The Earth is exactly like that orange peel. So the absolutely crucial point here is that every single flat map in existence has to sacrifice at least one of these four elements: shapes, sizes, distances, or directions. You simply cannot keep them all. The math literally won't allow it, which means the real question you should be asking isn't which map is entirely true. Instead, we've got to ask, which lie did this map choose to tell, and why did it choose it? Let's look at one of the most famous choices. Section 2. The Sailor's Solution and Mercator's 1569 Trick. Picture yourself as a sailor back in the 1500s. You have no GPS, just weeks and weeks of open water. Your only tools are a compass and a map. But on a round Earth, holding a constant compass bearing actually traces a curved path. If navigators got the math wrong, they missed entire continents. And well, they died at sea. Enter Gerardus Mercator. He elegantly solved this terrifying crisis by creating a map grid that stretched outward away from the equator. A sailor could simply draw a straight line, hold that compass heading, and safely arrive at their destination. A real game changer. But as with all things, this miracle technology came with a massive price tag. Mercator built a navigation instrument, and he priced it honestly. To ensure shapes and angles stayed perfectly true for those sailors, the sizes had to explode. The further you get from the equator, the more stretched the countries become, literally ballooning toward infinity at the poles, which is actually why the map quietly crops the poles off completely. It physically cannot show them. Now, Mercator didn't set out to shrink the equator or inflate the north, but for the next 4 centuries, the world's classrooms mistakenly adopted this highly specialized sailor's tool as if it were a literal photograph of reality. And that misunderstanding caused some serious drama. Section 3, the Map Wars and the Clash of Projections. After 400 years of that sailor's trick hanging on the wall, we hit an intense period of cartographic backlash in the 1970s. In 1973, we saw a massive visual and mathematical clash between two totally different lies. A historian named Arno Peters held a press conference to unveil a quote-unquote fair projection, where every country was shown at its true relative size. He argued Mercator was a relic that puffed up the north and diminished the developing world. And to be fair, Peters was absolutely right about the size distortion. But cartographers, they were furious. They correctly pointed out that to achieve perfect sizes, the Gall-Peters map violently butchers shapes, stretching continents like Africa and South America until they look like wet laundry hung out to dry. Both sides made completely valid critiques, impartially speaking. They just simply preferred different mathematical lies. Tracing this through history, you have Mercator in 1569, the Peters backlash in 1973, and by 1989, cartographic organizations were actually urging schools to just abandon all rectangular maps entirely. But look at this wildly ironic twist in 2005. Google Maps launches, and they actually chose the Mercator projection. Why? Well, not for political reasons, but for geometry. At street level, Mercator perfectly preserves 90-degree intersections. Navigating a modern city on a digital screen is kind of just the modern equivalent of sailing. So that old 1569 sailor's map became the most viewed map in human history. Section 4. Intentional map deceptions. Up until now, everything we've discussed has been honest lying, completely forced by mathematics. Now, let's shift to maps that are designed to deceive us completely on purpose. Here is a handy mental checklist for how maps deceive us. We have 4 distinct categories: the necessary geometric lie, the convenient lie of human comfort, the deliberate lie involving total fictions, and the modern political lie dictating digital borders. So, as a quick recap, the necessary lie is the math. We know you cannot flatten a sphere. But the convenient lie, that is purely about convention. Think about the fact that north is always up on our maps. The Earth is just floating in space, and space inherently has absolutely no up. Medieval maps sometimes put east at the top. The brilliant Islamic cartographer al-Idrisi drew a total masterpiece in 1154 with south at the top. The idea that north belongs on top is a convenient condition lie that basically went unchallenged simply because the institutions making the maps were largely located in the north. Then we have the deliberate fictions, which are wild. For decades, the Soviet Union systematically erased whole towns on civilian maps just to confuse foreign intelligence. American mapmakers once invented a completely fake town called Aglo to catch rival companies copying their maps until someone actually built a real store there and literally brought the fake town to life. And Sandy Island? It sat on official maps for 136 years until a 2012 research vessel went out there and found nothing but ocean. So yeah, sometimes maps literally edit the world. And that brings us to the modern political lie, which is happening on your smartphone right now. Digital maps actually change their borders based entirely on your IP address and local laws. If you open a map of Kashmir from inside India, it appears completely Indian by law. Open it elsewhere, and you'll see dashed lines marking a dispute. The rendering of Crimea has differed for users in Russia compared to the rest of the world. Chinese apps draw the 9-dash line across the South China Sea for their domestic users. It is the exact same planet, the exact same app, but completely different truths are being served to 2 different people. Meaning, the lie is now completely personalized. We aren't even pointing at the same map anymore to argue about it. So, where does this leave us? Section 5. Navigating a distorted world and searching for better lies. Cartographers have spent the last century trying to creatively balance the math. The Robinson projection was a sort of diplomatic compromise that lied a little bit about everything so nothing looked too monstrous. National Geographic now uses the Winkle triple, which beautifully minimizes overall distortion. We have the equal Earth projection, giving us true sizes without making the continents look all melted. There's even an ingenious Japanese design called orthograph that literally folds the globe into a triangle before unwrapping it. But of course, the absolute truest map most of us hold today isn't flat at all. It's the 3D digital globe you can spin when you zoom all the way out on your computer. After 400 years, Greenland finally shrank. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. A map is simply a choice about what to distort. You will never, ever find a distortion-free version of anything. And honestly, not just in cartography, but in life. A statistic flattens a beautifully messy world into a single number. A newsfeed curates the entire complex globe to fit onto your 6-inch screen. So the ultimate life skill you can take away today is to look at all data, all headlines, and all maps, and ask 2 questions. What was this built to do, and what did it sacrifice to do it? Apply that critical framework to your world going forward, and you will be so much harder to fool. Thanks for joining me on this one. Keep questioning the map on the wall.